Hey, this is Glen Walker. I appreciate being invited to the Nebraska Digital Accessibility Meetup this evening. And it's a little weird watching myself on a recording, a pre-recorded presentation here, but I can answer questions during the recording or during the presentation, the playback of the recording tonight. And I'll also, once the recording is over, um, we can probably do a live Q&A session there as well. But again, my name is Glen Walker. My contact information is the bottom left of the screen here. It's glen.walker@gmail.com if you have any questions later. And Glen is spelled with one N in case if you can't see the screen there. It's just glen.walker@gmail.com. And today we're going to talk about this little key on the keyboard. Very powerful key, the tab key, usually over on the left side of the keyboard. And just a quick intro to myself. So I've been working in the accessibility area since the early 2000s, and I approached accessibility from the technical side. So I have a computer science background and was hired as a software engineer right out of college and wrote code for a long, long time. And noticed that some of our software products, I worked for a software company, that some of our products were moving away from keyboard support, and it was a lot of point and click and drag and drop type things. And being a software engineer myself, very much a keyboard user, and it kind of annoyed me that keyboard wasn't working. So I started working on code or started fixing code to address keyboard issues. And then I also expanded that to work on screen reader issues. Um, and it kind of expanded from there. And I've been doing training and working with other developers and testing teams and design teams. And anyway, it's been a lot of fun past 15 or so years working on this. But let's get right into the presentation. And I just had my camera on initially just so you could meet me. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off so it won't be in the way. So just a real quick, the tab key itself. And this is interesting because I did a presentation for some testers one time, and we were talking about testing with the tab key. And one person asked, well, what's the tab key? So it kind of surprised me, but it's not, sometimes it's not a very often used key and you might overlook it. So that's why I kind of showed the key initially on my keyboard, but a little bit of history, just a real quick short history. But if you go back to really old typewriters, this is probably early 1900s, that the tab key itself was over on the right side of the keyboard. And in this picture here, the tab key is it's a different color. It's red compared to all the other keys, which are white, besides the space bar, and that's black. But it was over on the right side, and which kind of surprised me a little bit. And even if I go to a somewhat more modern-ish compared to the last picture typewriter, again, the tab key is over on the right side and still red in this case here. If we move a little bit forward into the 70s and get an IBM, I think it was a Selectric typewriter. So it's an electronic typewriter. The tab key moved over to the left side of the keyboard. And so at some point, tab moved from the right to the left. I'm not sure why. That would be kind of interesting to research that. And then, of course, on our modern day keyboards, the tab key is over on the left side of the keyboard. So why do I want to talk about the tab key and why is this little key so powerful? Well, you don't need any special hardware to test with it. Most people have a keyboard, whether it's built into your laptop or separate from your computer, a USB device, or whatever the case may be. If you don't have a keyboard for whatever reason, they are pretty cheap. I mean, you can get one for like 10 bucks on Amazon. So it's a very low budget item. I say no special hardware required. I mean, you do need a keyboard hardware, but it's not really nothing special about it. But what I actually want to do today is, in addition to testing with the keyboard and tabbing through the interface just to get access to all the elements on the page, I also want to combine that with running my browser with a custom style sheet. And I also want to run with a screen reader running in the background. Now, if you haven't done any CSS coding or you've never run with a screen reader before, don't worry. This is going to be pretty simple and basic here. You're not really going to do anything involved with it. And it's also, you might be a little bit of a cross sell here where I initially was going to talk about just the tab key, but it's kind of the tab key plus these other little side benefits with the custom style sheet and the screen reader. So let me just give you a quick demo, first of all, and then we'll come back into the slides because I want you to see what I'm talking about with a custom style sheet. So let's just go to the meetup page. And I think I already have that open here. All right, so I've got my browser on the left side because I'm going to bring up the code inspector on the right side at some point later in the presentation, but that's why, in case you see it over on the left. But when I'm on the meetup page, so if I start tabbing through the page, there's a purple outline, which is showing where my current keyboard focus is. And that's because I'm running with a custom style sheet that is applied to every web page I visit because I installed it. Here I'm using Firefox. And I'll go into details on how to set this up for Firefox as well as other browsers. But I just wanted to show you, I usually run with this. It's fantastic for accessibility testing because it's very easy to tell where your focus is. It's also great for doing demos, right? If you're in at a conference and have a projection, or just even here today, it's easy for you to see where my focus is on the page because of this sort of thick purple border. So, you can just tab through the interface and see where the focus goes over on the left side, and then tab over to the right on the share organizer tools, and then the meetup page, the help icon. And then here's our first problem. I'm tabbing forward and I'm kind of stuck in a tab trap. Now I can tab backwards if I hold shift and tab. I can get out of that. So it's kind of a half trap, I guess. Going forward, I can't go anywhere, but going backward, I can. Anyway, I just wanted to show you a quick demo using the style sheet there, and we'll get into that in a second. So why do I talk about the tab key? Well, when you're looking at the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and for those that aren't familiar, these are a set of guidelines and testing criteria that you can use to kind of see what where you are, where your website is with regards to how accessible it is. And I'm showing you all 78 checkpoints right now, single A, double A, and triple A. Most companies do not focus on AAA, and most laws, country laws and state laws, do not specify AAA either. So if we ignore those for now and just look at single A and double A, and I'm not going to dive into the details of what WCAG is, what single A is, what double A is, but generally, if you have to work on accessibility, you probably have to focus on these first two columns, the 30 single A requirements and the 20 double A requirements. But so there's 50 total here. When you're testing with the tab key, in addition to a screen reader and a focus indicator, a custom style sheet, you can really test for about 14. There may be some other ones here that I didn't list, but just kind of off the top of my head, I was able to list 14 different checkpoints that I can test using the tab key. And if you do the simple math, 14 out of those 50 checkpoints, that's 28%. So over a quarter of your accessibility testing really could be done with the tab key. That's fantastic. Real simple, basic. So if you're just getting started in accessibility and testing and checking for it, that you can get a lot done with just the tab key. So in addition to tabbing, as I mentioned, I am running with a custom style sheet, and all browsers let you have a custom style sheet. Now, the way you implement that for each browser could be a little bit different. Firefox, Chrome, and Edge, they all allow a plugin to do the styling. So it's not built into the browser itself, but there are plugins written to do that. Firefox also has a non-plugin version as well, and we can talk about that after the presentation today during the live Q&A if we need to. I like the plugin version because I can turn on and off the focus indicator fairly easily, and I can also change my custom indicator on the fly and not have to restart the browser. With Safari on the Mac and Internet Explorer, both of those browsers let you point your browser to an external file that contains the CSS. And so instead of using a plugin, you're just pointing it to an external file. And even on iOS, I can set up a custom style sheet. And I do that through setting up a bookmarklet that kind of injects some CSS onto the page that I'm viewing. And I'm not going to go into great details on that aspect. We can do that again during the live Q&A if we need to. But the highlighted piece of code on this page near the bottom says *:focus, and this is just a piece of CSS. So *:focus means that every element on the page that can have a focus state, I want the outline or the border around the element, I want it to have a purple border. That's what the RGB F0F value is. I want it to be solid. It could be dashed or dotted or whatever, crosshatch, whatever kind of pattern you want. And I want it to be 4 pixels wide, so a little bit thicker than normal. So a purple solid, kind of thick. And you kind of saw that on the quick demo on the Meetup site. And then I also have bang important there at the end so that it absolutely uses my style over the page's style. And without that, sometimes I will not see my purple border because the page is overriding it. And I'm not quite sure on the details of how the plugin injects its style compared to the page's style and which one wins. So I always have the bang important there at the end. So just real quick here, and I mainly have these slides here so that you can go back if you want to rewatch this. You can pause it and see the what's going on here and try it yourself. Plus, I'll send out the slides as well. So with the plugin version, just look for stylus in the whatever the extension store is that you're using, whether it's Firefox, Chrome, or Edge. And Edge does it through the Chrome web store. But if you look for stylus and it's got this kind of S, cyan colored S logo, you found the right one there. And you just have to go into manage and write a new style. And when you write the style, it's really that one piece of code that I just showed on the previous slide to set it to be purple solid 4 pixel. And then you save that. This is the non-plugin option for Firefox. You just have to go into about:support to get to your profile folder. And then you put your CSS file in that folder. And I'm not going to go into details here. Again, we can talk about this later if we need to. For both Internet Explorer and Safari, they let you point to an external file. So within Internet Explorer, if anybody is doing any testing on that still, you just go into your general settings, and the bottom right is an accessibility button. And that brings up a small dialog where near the bottom, there's a checkbox to format the documents using a style sheet. And then you just point it to wherever your .css file is. Similar with Safari, you just go into the preferences under advanced, and about 2/3 down on the screen is a drop-down selector for style sheet, or I guess it's a file selector. And you can go choose the external file you want to point it to. Anyway, so that's setting up the style sheet. It's fairly easy. Just you need that one line of code, and we'll change some of the properties in a little bit in one of the demos. But I also run with a screen reader as well. And this is fantastic because anytime you're navigating through the page, you can just be listening. You don't have to be interacting with the screen reader so much. You're just kind of running it in the background, listening to what it's saying. So you don't have to be an expert on screen readers, just let it run. And so on the Mac, if you have a Mac, you have a screen reader built in called VoiceOver, and you can turn it on and off using Command F5. And I've found that so I teach some classes on how to use a screen reader and various different ones, VoiceOver for the Mac and JAWS and NVDA for PC. And I found that people that have never used a screen reader find VoiceOver a little bit more difficult to learn. It's not terrible, but it's a little bit more of a steeper learning curve to learn the Mac because some of the interactions are not quite as intuitive maybe. But if you have a PC, then you can use either JAWS or NVDA. JAWS requires a license. There is a trial mode that you can run with. It forces you to reboot your computer after 40 minutes when you use that. And NVDA is free. They willingly accept donations if you want to do that. And so I'm going to be running with NVDA today for just a real quick short demo. And and in these, when you're running the PC screen reader, you can just kind of, as I mentioned, have it running in the background, and I can just be tabbing through the page and interacting with the page the way I normally do, and just kind of listening to what's going on there. So what do you want to do as you're navigating through the page, right? So just press the tab key and see where it takes you. And if you have that custom style sheet, it should be obvious where your focus is. So anything you see on the page that you can click on with the mouse should be focusable with the tab key, right? So you should be able to tab through the interface, and the focus should be able to land on that element that you can normally click with the mouse. And then again, anything that you click on with the mouse should also be actionable through the keyboard. So as I tab through the interface and get to the various elements on the page, and if it's something that I can interact with, whether it's clicking it or expanding it or whatever the case may be, I should be able to interact with that element using the keyboard. That could be the space key or the enter key or the arrow keys. Now that's beyond just the one tab key, when I'm trying to talk about testing with just one key. But, while you're there on the keyboard, you can test a few other keys as well. So one of the things I do as I'm tabbing through the interface is I watch for when the focus indicator disappears. And I'll go into a few more details on that in the next page, but to see when it disappears, because that means something is probably hidden or maybe fake hidden by having it pushed off the screen. One of the requirements, one of the checkpoints in WCAG is to test the focus indicator itself. So when you do that, you want to turn off your custom style sheet because you want to see what the pages style, what the pages focus indicator looks like by itself. And I think that's 2.4.7. So when you do that, when you test the pages focus indicator, if it's using the default one, you probably want to test on a couple different browsers because each browser has its own default, whether it's a blue outline or I think Internet Explorer has a black and white dotted one. And despite all the picking on that Internet Explorer has, they actually did the focus indicator really well because when it's a black and white dotted outline, no matter what color your background is, you can always see it, right? So if you're on a dark background or a blue background or a black background, you can see the white dots. And if you're on a white background, you can see the black dots. So it's really awesome. Anyway, so if the focus indicator disappears, whether you're using your custom style sheet or not, as I mentioned, it usually indicates an element is kind of fake hidden. And it's really done this by pushing it off the screen. That may be done with the left property or the X property, or sometimes I've seen the opacity is changed so that it's see-through, right? You can't see the element, you can see through it and you can see what's behind it. So it's a non-opaque. And so the opacity property has been set. So when you're tabbing through the interface and the focus indicator disappears, this is a great time to have the screen reader running because then you can just listen for what has focus. You can hear what's going to be read, and hopefully that element has some kind of text that the screen reader can announce. So as I'm tabbing through the interface, I talk about here the last bullet point is inspecting the code, so you can just see what the element is and maybe what's causing the issue. But there's a little trick when inspecting the element when your focus is on an element that is fake hidden. So what you do not want to do is use F12. If you're on a PC, don't use F12 to open the code inspector because that will put your focus in the code inspector on the body tag. And so you will have lost where it was, which element it was on the page. Likewise, you don't want to try to do a right mouse click. So if you're tabbing through the interface and the focus disappears, don't try to right click to bring up the code inspector, because again, that will lose the place in the DOM when the code inspector comes up. Instead, what you want to do is use the context menu, which is typically over on the right side of your keyboard, down near the bottom, on the right side of the space bar. And it looks like on this screenshot I have here, I've highlighted on the keyboard, it's kind of a 3 horizontal line menu square looking thing. I'm not quite sure how to describe that. If you have an Alt key and a Windows logo key, then it could be to the right of that. But press that button. If you don't have that key on your keyboard, you can also use Shift F10. Sometimes you have to do Control Shift F10 if you want the keyboard equivalent of a right mouse click or the menu button. Anyway, when you hit that menu button, it's as if you did a right mouse click, and the menu pops up. And on Firefox, Inspect Element is kind of about halfway down the menu. It also has a Q next to it, so I could press the Q key once the menu appears. On Chrome, I think Inspect is at the bottom of the menu. And so when you hit the menu key, you can just hit menu key and then hit up arrow to kind of wrap through the bottom of the menu, and you get quickly to that element. On Firefox, I hit this key and then Q real fast, and I get to the browser, Code Inspector. So, and I'm going to show all these demos in a minute. We're almost done here with the slide part. So as you're tabbing through the interface, and when you have a screen reader running, you want to listen to the elements. Now, this is a little bit beyond just using the tab key, but you're using your ears in combination with the tab key. So you want to listen for unlabeled elements or poorly labeled elements. And we'll see an example of that on our first demo coming up. And you also want to listen for any elements that may not have context to them. Oftentimes, like on a news site, you'll see a short snippet of a news story, and then at the end it'll say read more. Well, if that's all it says, read more, read more, read more, I'm not quite sure what I'm reading more about. And so you want to have a little more context with that link. Same thing with learn more or click here, those types of things. You also want to listen for the state of widgets. You may have a checkbox that is either checked or unchecked. You should be able to hear that with a screen reader. And I should be able to tab to that checkbox using the tab key. And then I should be able to use the space bar on the keyboard to check and uncheck it. Same thing with buttons. If you have like a toggle button that can be pressed and unpressed, or if you have an accordion that can be expanded or collapsed, you should be able to hear the state of those widgets as you're tabbing to them. And again, this is going a little bit beyond just the tab key, but it is running with the screen reader, and there's a lot of information you can get just tabbing through the interface, listening, and watching for the screen focus or the focus indicator. All right. I just noticed my slides. I like to have my slide numbers in the upper right corner, and it looks like we overachieved a little bit today. I guess I didn't update that. We're on slide 22 of 20. I just like to have those up there because as you're watching a presentation, you're wondering how long is this going to last? And so if you saw we were on like slide 15 of 20, you're almost there, 75% way. Although if you don't have the numbers correct, now we actually had 2 additional slides. Anyway, let me show you just 3 quick demos. And we're going to go back to the meetup page, and then I'm going to show you a quick Walmart check and also Amazon. So let's swap back over to the meetup page. All right. Bring up the code inspector. I hit F12 because I'm not on an element at the moment. But so as I was tabbing through this page, remember we had this issue with a tab trap, which is kind of annoying, because if I was on the page and I wanted to join this meeting, that the button to join it was at the bottom and I couldn't get to it. Now I could potentially go to the address bar, hitting Alt D, and then start tabbing backwards to the page. So it wraps around to the bottom, and that seems to be okay. And I can tab through here, get through all these, and there we go. So I am able to tab backwards through the page. Get to report this event. Now, if I tab backwards once more, it goes to the Nebraska link here. And if I get to that point and I can try to go forward again, now I'm stuck, kind of messed up. So anyway, that's the first problem there. And I looked at the code here. I didn't see a keyboard handler like it was handling the tab key. I did notice though that there's a little question mark button inside of this element here. And if we inspect that, oh, I did that a little quick, but so I hit my context menu key, which brings up the pop menu for Firefox, and then inspect element is right here, but I hit Q because that's a shortcut. So the question mark is a button. Cool, right? It's got a button, has a span in it, has an image, has a question mark. So sounds like if I were to tab to that with the screen reader on, I'm probably just going to hear question mark because there's no other element there. And we can try that in a second. But what I wanted to show you was that you have this button, and if we look up in the DOM tree, if we keep going up and up and up and up, all the way up, here we go. Here's an anchor tag. So the entire block there for Nebraska Digital Accessibility Meetup is a link, and it contains a nested button, which is an invalid HTML. You can't have a button nested in an anchor tag. That also fails, is it 4.1.1, I think, is parsing. So it would fail that requirement. But maybe that's causing part of this weird tabness, or the tab trap here. Actually, let's bring up the screen reader.
Taskbar. Meeting controls window.
All right.
Developer tools, put it on my organizer tools button.
Hopefully we can hear that. Turn that up a little bit. All right, well, that first link, I'm not hearing anything. Yeah, interesting.
Organizer, share button, organizer tools button. Nebraska Digital Accessibility Meetup graphic. Nebraska Digital Accessibility Meetup clickable public group visited link.
That's the name of that link.
Button visited link.
Button visited link. All right, so it doesn't actually say question mark. If there was text there followed by a question mark, it would read the text with a question mark inflection. But a question mark just by itself is punctuation, and it won't read. Well, my default settings of NVDA are not going to read punctuation marks. So we noticed just by looking at code, there was nothing there to read, and that's exactly what is happening. Couple other things here. Let me turn off the screen reader. So in between this Nebraska Digital Meetup and down at the bottom, there's report this event. If I click on the page just to get out of that tab trap, and I tab to report this event, which I don't want to do. This is a good event. I'm not going to report it to Meetup. But there's add to calendar and online meeting URL. So, and when I hover with a mouse, it changes from the arrow pointer to the finger pointer to show that I can click on it. But I noticed I can't tab to those elements. And if I get out of that tab trap, right? So if I tab backwards, I can't tab to either of these elements. So as I'm testing this page, I'm noticing my focus indicator jumps over those if there weren't a tab trap. So this would be something I would look into. And if we look at the add to calendar, in this case here, I can right mouse click. There is a span. There's actually a div with the code highlighted in blue. Let me move my focus up a little bit because it's easier to read the code without everything being blue. Here's a div that has a roll equals button. Fantastic. It's got a roll. It's got ARIA label, open menu. All right, that's great. ARIA expanded is false. Cool. It's got some ARIA tags here and some accessibility built in. It says ARIA has pop-up, which implies it has a menu that's going to display. And additionally, when you have a menu displayed, that it's going to support up and down arrow keys to navigate through the menu. That's just kind of that's part of the menu design pattern. But there's it's just a div. It's not a real button. It has roll equals button, so it's going to read it as a button if I could tab to it, which I can't. There's no tab index, and the event handler itself, there's a click, on blur, on click, on key down. Oh, so there's an on key down. That's great. So maybe if I could get to it, it might actually do something when I press a keyboard event, but I can't get to it. because it's not a real button. And the other one, the online actual meetup link. Well, it's an anchor tag. Fantastic. Well, anchor tags are normally keyboard focusable by default, but in this case here, there is no href property. So an anchor tag without an href is just called a placeholder link, and those are not keyboard focusable by default. And there's probably just an event handler here, so it's listening just for click. So sorry, keyboard users, you cannot join our meeting. Only the mouse users can join the meeting. And I know this isn't your fault, right? This is just the meetup page. This has nothing to do with the accessibility group here in Nebraska. So anyway, there's another issue there. So I think there are a few other issues on this page, but let's go to another example. And let me refresh this page. So I don't know if anybody still uses checks anymore, but I did notice on the Walmart check page, if you wanted to order checks, and occasionally I suppose you have to write a paper check occasionally. Most everything is like electronic transfers. But when I come to this page, if I wanted to order checks, so right now I can't see my purple outline, but if I tab once, all right, my focus goes to the bank routing number, which from a UX perspective, that kind of makes sense, right? First thing I want to do is put in the routing number and the account number and zip code. I'm on the check order page. I don't want to have to tab and navigate through the top menu area because I'm already on this page. This is what I want to do. So from a UX perspective, it kind of makes sense to allow the focus to be on the first field there. And if I tab, fill in the account number, zip code, all right, I'm done. Now let me go ahead, continue to the next page. And oops, after tabbing after zip code, focus just went up to Walmart checks logo. And now as I keep tabbing, like, well, all I want to do is continue to the next page. What the heck? What's going on here? Business check. Oh, there we go. Now I'm on continue. All right, so they kind of made it easier by putting the focus initially on the routing number, but then they messed up because now once I finish all that, I can't get to the continue button. Well, I can get to it. I just had to tab 20 or 30 times to get to it. And in this case here, let me click back to get there. This was just a poor use of the tab index attribute. And if we look at all the other fields, so we can see that the first input field has a tab index of 1. Next one has a tab index of 2, and then tab index of 3. And then the continue button, sorry, does not have a tab index. So it's going to be in the default tab order, which is going to start from the top left corner of the page. So tab index, you can use positive values for tab index, and this is in the tab index presentation, but you can use positive values for tab index, and it can be done correctly. It's just a big pain, and I would not recommend using it. You just have to specify the tab index for everything once you start doing some of the elements. A better solution here would be to not use tab index at all, use the normal default tabbing order, but when the page loads, just do a JavaScript focus function call and move the focus to the input field. And then, the normal focus order would be in play here. So I could tab from the routing number, account number, zip code, and then my next tab would be to the continue field or continue button. Now in this case here, when I tab, it went up to here. I meant right before the continue button. Let me get to the continue button again. All right, so I'm on continue. If I tab backwards, my focus disappeared. And if I tab backwards again, now I'm on business checks. So here's another case where focus is on something that is kind of fake hidden. If I use the context menu key and Q, bring up the code inspector. Indeed, there is an anchor tag. That's where my focus is. And it has text called help, but the href is just JavaScript void 0. So here's a link that does nothing. And if I were to navigate through this page, using a screen reader, I would hear help link. And if I try to select it, I would get no help. Um, thank you, Walmart. So, all right, one last demo here. And just to show you that big name people, big name companies are not immune to these types of issues. So here is Amazon. And let me just start tabbing from the top of the page. All right, we're on the search bar. There's language, account, return orders. And then as I tab through, I'm just going to tab through quickly through the main menu. All right, let me tab backwards again. So if I tab forward from free shipping, tab once, my focus is gone. Tab again, focus is still gone. Tab again, now I'm on the carousel. So here's another case where element is missing or fake hidden. And I just want to show you, I know this has been similar to the other ones that were fake hidden, but this one's kind of interesting. Not so much by what's causing the problem, but really what the hidden links are. So if I bring up the code inspector over on the right, and let me move my focus up one line just because, again, it's easier to read the code without all the blue. Here's an anchor tag with an href and an ARIA label that says, click to call our disability customer support line. Really? That's kind of fantastic that Amazon has a disability customer support line. I didn't know that was there until I started playing with the page here just to see if there were other pages that other companies that had keyboard issues. So I think that's a fantastic thing to have. And why hide it, right? Only the screen reader user is going to find this because they're the ones that are going to tab through with a screen reader on or navigating by links or by buttons or, there's all different ways to navigate using a screen reader. But you're going to hear, here's our disability customer support line and tells you the phone number and all that. So fantastic feature to have, but it's going to be hidden for many users. You're not going to see that. And in fact, they have, there's an ARIA label on this link, as well as visible text. Well, visible if I could unhide it here. The ARIA label, disability customer support, well, it does, so it doesn't fail 2.5.3. So the label that's displayed does match the ARIA label plus additional information. If I wanted to look at the CSS for this over on the right in the code inspector, there is, you can see they're kind of hiding it by setting the left attribute to minus 10,000, which pushes it way over to the left. So let's turn that off. And the width and height are set to 1 pixel. Let's turn that off. And if we go back over to the page, you can kind of see it. It's a little bit hidden and the color isn't great because it's kind of a bluish on a dark gray. If I hover over it, it's a little more rust color, I guess. So you can see it. Of course, it wasn't intended to be seen. That's why they hid it. Anyway, and then there was one other one that was missing. So here again, my focus disappears. Context menu. Scroll this back over so you can see it. So there is an anchor tag with a href of access. And if I open that, look at this. Welcome to Amazon. If you prefer a simplified shopping experience, try the mobile version of Amazon at amazon.com/access. Well, that's kind of cool, right? They have a simplified version of the page. But again, sorry, sighted users, you're not going to find this. Only the screen reader user is going to stumble upon this. Or maybe somebody who notices their focus indicator disappears and then they hit enter because they're just curious where their focus was. I did try this and it's kind of a neat, simplified interface. Now, if you do try this, just forewarning, Amazon will save a cookie on your page so that from now on, anytime you go to amazon.com, it's always going to take you to the /access site. So you need to go into your browser's cache and delete any Amazon cookies in order to get back to the original. So you can certainly try that if you want, but I would recommend, maybe do it in a private browser window so that it doesn't save the cookie there. Anyway, so those were 3 examples there of various different types of keyboard issues. Again, My name is Glen Walker, and I am here live and able to answer questions today if you have any. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the earlier slides, there's about 14 different. Let's jump back to that actually. If I can see where, here we go. We did keyboard trap 2.1.2. We found that on the meetup page. We didn't try any keyboard shortcuts. There weren't any videos or anything playing, so I didn't have to pause those. Bypass blocks. There was a skip link on the Amazon site. Link purpose we didn't see. Focus visible. We always had the custom one turned on. Label and name was almost a problem. You can only really catch that when you're running with a screen reader as well. It was almost a problem on the Amazon site, but they actually did it correctly. So we actually saw quite a few of these elements here, or quite a few of these issues here. Anyway, I will wrap up now, and we can take further questions. Thank you.